Hi everyone, let us continue with the class. All right. In the previous class, we did up till page number 132, not 132, sorry, 134. That is importance of geographical factor. The last topic that we discussed was about this, the Nilgiris, the Cardamom Hills. Okay, these were the things that we discussed, the peninsula and all. Correct. So let us continue from the next paragraph. All right, let us continue with the same topic. Next page number 134, right inside, last paragraph. Like any other country of the world, the course of Indian history has largely been shaped by the geographical features of India, the Ganga Yamuna Doab, the Middle Ganga Valley, Malwa, Northern Deccan, Andhra, Kalinga, which is called the coastal Odisha, and the Tamil Plains are the major perennial nuclear region which emerged as bases of power quite early. Smaller areas such as the Konkan, Kanara, and Chhattisgarh have also made a mark. Some areas such as the Raichur between Krishna and Tungabhadra and Venji between the Godavari and Krishna have been continuously contested for the agricultural resource potential. All right. So here in this paragraph that I just read, these are the names which you need to mark it up. You need to memorize. I don't have to explain you the names. It basically says us what were the geographical features because of which India got its shape. So these are the names: this Ganga Yamuna Do, Middle Ganga Valley, what do you call Kalinga, Northern Deccan. Okay. And yeah, one line that is there in this para which I have to explain you is that this particular area, especially this what do you call the this the Ganga Yamuna Do, Middle Ganga Valley, Malwa, Northern Andhra, Kalinga, Tamil Plain, Konkan, Kanara, Chhattisgarh. These are some Konka, Kanara, Chhattisgarh. These are some of the smaller areas. Okay, and also some of the areas such as Raichur, which lies between the Krishna and Tungabhadra, Venji between the Godavari and Krishna. So these areas, the smaller areas, okay, they have been a great place of existence, especially for their agricultural resource. That is something which you need to take note of. Otherwise, the names, okay, which shape this would Indian history, or you can say the country. So, remember one thing, that these places serve a great purpose for agricultural, what do you call resources. Next para. At most periods of history, India, though a cultural unit, was torn by internecines, war, famine, flood, and plague killed millions of people. Inequality of birth was given religious sanction, and a lot of humble was generally hard. This, however, was true for any part of the ancient world of the time. Judged in the context of time, the relation among the people or between the people and the state were fair enough and human. Alright, this is something I need to explain you the whole paragraph. Listen properly. Like our country, if you see the history of our country, you see our country was divided, okay, because of various reasons. Because various reasons, our country, the people of our country, they were forced, they were compelled. uh, it's not that whether they willingly, they didn't want it to be with one another, or the people didn't want it to be united with one another, but situations were such, like some of the situations were like famine, lack of food. You don't have food to eat, man. What will you go and do your friendship? First of all, you are dying out of hunger. Flood, something natural calamity which is beyond your capacity, beyond your control. Plague, disease, because earlier, nowadays, okay, fine, we have got the health system, the health facilities and all, it has been developed, but I'm talking about this history, okay. Earlier days, the health system and all, it wasn't so good. So as a result, a small disease killed millions of people, okay. In addition to it, this is not enough. Inequality of birth. Now, this was something which was very wrong, but how can't help it because the days were such. Okay. Now, inequality of birth. It means like let me think about an example so that you can understand in a proper way. All right. Yeah. Let me give you my example. Okay. For example, say I'm born in a Brahmin family. All right. For example, say my father is a priest. Okay. Now I'm born in a Brahmin family. My father is a priest, but however, I'm not a good human being. For example, okay, I'm good, right? So this is just an example. So say I'm not a good human being. I'm a naughty person. I'm a naughty man. But however, my father is a holy person. He is a priest in the society, in the locality. Just because I'm born into a priest family, what happens? Yes, my father deserves the respect because he is a good person in the society. But since I'm his son, whether I deserve it or not, by default, since I'm born in that particular family, people will start, respecting me. They will, what do you call? They will obey me. They will listen to me as because my father is a priest. But everybody knows that I'm not a good person. One example. Second example, another same example, same my example. Say I'm born into a very poor family, where my father is a what, a kind of a shoemaker, you can say that. Okay, a shoemaker, a cobbler. All right, my father is a cobbler. I'm born into that particular family, but I'm a very good man. I'm good in studies. Okay, I'm good in behavior. Now what happens? Even if I want to go and enroll myself into a good school for proper education or a good college, I will not be allowed. Why? Because my father is a cobbler. I belong to that family. My father is a cobbler. I belong to that family. What is my fault in that? Did I choose that? No, I'll get, I'll be born in only this family. I want to get, did I tell God that I want to get birth in this particular family? Don't give me in that family. But however, this system existed in our society, inequality of birth. That means by birth, everybody was not treated. That means people were treated on the basis of, or in one word, in other term, if I explain you can say privileges by birth. Yeah, that will be the correct word. Privilege. People got privileges just by birth, which was very wrong. In fact, I tell you, that privileges must not be based upon birth. It must be based upon merit. It must be based upon your capability, the one who deserves it. Not that just because I'm born in a priest family, so and no matter how I'm a naughty person, I'm a bad person, but everybody will respect me. That's wrong. And just because I'm born into a cobbler's family, my father is a cobbler, but since I'm a poor fellow, nobody will allow me, or nobody will give me any opportunity. I will not get the chance to go to a good school or study. That is very wrong. So that is called inequality. I hope you understood inequality of birth. All right. So inequality of birth, that was another thing. And it was something considered, a religious sanction. It was really practiced and followed everywhere into our society. But again, the book says, even though this wrong things took place in our society, but it was fair enough. Yes, that's the book says. I'm not saying. I will read. Please look into the last sentence. The wrong things, even those existed, it says it was fair enough. Why? I'll tell you. Judge in the context of time, the relation among the people or between the people and the state were fair enough, and you judge in the context of time, which means you look at the time, look at the scenario. I'm talking about those days. Okay, say 50, 60, 70, 100 years ago, not 100 or 150 years ago. I'm talking about those days. Yes, if the same thing still prevails in the society, then it is very wrong, because there is 21st century. We're living in a modern world, the modern society, where these things has got no place. But if you judge in the context of time of those days, the society which existed then, okay, the type of people and all right, accepted. It's fair and fair enough. Okay, that's what the book says. I hope you understood. All right, where am I? Yeah, next para. Unlike Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Greece, however, the tradition of India have been preserved without a break to the present day. To this day, legends known to the humblest Indian recall the names of shadow chieftains who lived nearly 1,000 years before Christ. And the Orthodox Hindus, in their daily worship, repeat hymns composed even earlier. India and China have, in fact, the oldest continuous cultural tradition in the world. Something different to know. Very good. Interesting, right? See, so many things you get to know. All right, so especially the Indian culture, okay, the Indian culture was, or you can say the Indian society, the Indian tradition was not like that of Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Greece. Okay, the tradition of India was something different. In fact, the culture, the tradition of India, if you see, it has been preserved without any breakage up till the present day. We have got connection. The present day tradition of our country, or the practices that I do, you do, the belief that I have, you have. If you try to find out the linkage, that why do I follow this tradition? What is it? Who started? You will see it goes up to long, 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 long years. It goes up to this what you call. Ancient history and all. That's what the book says, that the tradition of India have been preserved without a break to the present day. It's all connected, and it has been in practice regularly, continuously, no breakage. In fact, today also, to this day, some of the legends of our country, okay, so their names, they are being remembered. All right, this is what you call. They are known for their humblest, for their humbleness in okay, who lived nearly 1,000 years before Christ. Today also, these people are remembered. They are known, and they survived. They lived 1,000 years before Christ, before Jesus, when they were born. See, the book says, I'm not saying this, something different. So today also they are known. They are being remembered because of the tradition, that practice that went on. And also some of the Orthodox Hindus, uh, the Orthodox Hindus, today also in the daily worship, the daily prayer that we do, that I do, you do, and all, the hymns, the prayer song, the hymns which are being, what do you call, repeated during the prayer, where some these hymns were composed even earlier. So see the continuous practice without any break. A hymn which was composed thousands year ago, we are practicing it today during our prayer, day in and day out, right? So that's what, without any breakage, our Indian tradition. In fact, India and China, the book says that India and China has the oldest continuous cultural tradition in the world. Okay, I hope you got this para. We have got one more topic. Let's finish it up this chapter, right? All right, let's finish up. Terms used to describe the Indian subcontinent. All right, so this is something different. We know our country, India, but see the title itself says that there were many terminologies which were used. Terminology which were used to describe the Indian subcontinent. Name different names. Let's see what were the different terminology. Throughout its history, the Indian subcontinent has been known by varied names. During the ancient period, it was referred to by such names as Bharatavarsha and Jambu Vipa. What is this? Jambu Divipa. A different name. The Vishnu Purana says the country lying to the north of the ocean and the south of the Himadri. That is, Himadri means the Himalaya. Okay. The Vishnu Purana says that the country lying to the north of the ocean and the south of the Himadri, that is the Himalaya, is called Bharatavarsha. All right, underline that. What do you mean by Bharatavarsha? And how did it got its name? It's basically, it got its name from the Purana, the Vishnu Purana, not Purana, the Vishnu Purana. Okay. In fact, this name is also mentioned in the Rig Veda. South Asia was also called Jambudvipa, or the land of wood apple tree, in the Puranic and Buddhist text. Okay. So the South Asia was also called, this is what you call Jambudvipa, or the land of the wood apple tree, as per the Puranic and the Buddhist literature, Buddhist text. So it's the different names of a country. One is Bharatavarsha, one is Jambu. So Bharatavarsha is basically, name which we got from the Vishnu Purana, and the reason why Bharatavarsha, the Purana, Vishnu Purana says that country lying in the north of the ocean and south of the Himalayas. And why Jambudvipa? It says that land of wood apple tree, as per the Puranic and the Buddhist text. Another name, Aryavata. Aryavata means land of Aryans. Now, how come this got its name? Let's see. It is said to have been used by the Patanjali. Patanjali? Okay, not this Patanjali. A different Patanjali this earlier. So it is said to have been used by Patanjali to denote the northern part of India lying between the Himalayas and the Vindhyas. All right. So especially the area lying between the Himalayas and the Vindhyas. So Patanjali have described this area as a Aryavata. So see different names. Bharatavarsha, Jambudvipa, Aryavata, right? So many names of a country and how it originated. Oh, some more. The Jandavastha, the sacred book of the Parsis, describes the subcontinent as Sapta Sindhu. Sapta Sindhu, another name of a country. What does it mean? Land of seven rivers. Okay. Now the ancient Greeks, they referred the Indians as Indoi, which means people of Indus River. And during the medieval period, the name which gained popularity was Hindustan. Okay, all right, something new again. Huh? Such an interesting things you're getting to know. We just know our country in what do you call India, Bharat, but see so many names we have. So from now, if anybody asks you where do you reside, you can say Bharatavarsha, right? All right. The Jandavastha, a book, a sacred book, like a holy book of the Parsis. Okay, there it is being described that the name of our continent, the name of our country is Sapta Sindhu. Okay, which means land of seven rivers. And whereas this the Greek people, we call ourselves as Indian, they used to refer us as Indoi. Indoi means a people of the river Indus. And in fact, in the medieval period, the name which like we have come across so many names, the name which gained much popularity was this Hindustan. Now the question is, see, next, it's a very important thing. Please mark the whole paragraph. Now the one which I'm about to read. This name is still used in India, and therefore it is important to know how this came into existence. The question itself is framed. that how the name Hindustan came into existence, and the answer I believe it is being described in the next paragraphs that follows. So question and answer, everything is being framed. You just need to understand and go through. All right, let's see how this name Hindustan came into existence. On a physical map of India, you can notice that the river Indus or Sindhu and its five tributaries, that means a portion of that particular river, a small portion of that particular major river which outflows it from it, okay, tributaries. On a physical map of India, you can notice that the river Indus or Sindhu and its five tributaries, that is Ravi, Satluj, Peas, Chenab, and Jhelum, from the western form the western frontier of India, western border of India. Sindhu was an ancient Aryan name which could not be pronounced correctly by the people who invaded or visited India from northwest. Example: the Iranian, Afghans, Turk, Mughal, etc. Underline that. A major point, key point. Sindhu was an ancient Aryan name which, you know, the people who came to India from this, what do you call, from the northwest, that is the Iranian, Afghan, Mughal, Turk, they were unable to pronounce this name. Okay, Sindhu. Let's see. Then what did they pronounce? In their language, the S became H. Okay, all right. In their language, the S became H. So they pronounced the river's name as Hindu. All right. This is where the all the logic lies out here. It's Sindhu, but since they were not unable to pronounce S, the letter S, okay, they termed it as H. So Sindhu became Hindu for them. Okay, and that is where the name Hindustan or the land of river Hindu came from the term Hindu. All right. So basically, Hindustan has got nothing, no connection with this Hinduism or Hindu religion. Huh? Nothing like that. Misconception. If you have that, okay, if you have that understanding, remove it out. This is where the actual answer lies. That since it is called the land of river Hindus, I mean Sindhus, and that's what they mean, right? So Hindus, don't confuse yourself. And that is how the term came Hindu, and it was from the river Sindhu. Okay, it's actually Sindhu, but for them it's Hindu. It was from the river Hindu, which means Indus, that the people those were living on the eastern side of the river came to be known as Hindus in the medieval period, in the medieval India. So hope you got that this Hindustan, something more addition. The second paragraph also is a, it's, so yeah, this is continuation of the first paragraph. Let's see. The term Hind and Hindustan were used in both Persian and Arabic languages as well. After the Islamic conquest of the 11th century, thus the rulers of the Delhi Sultanate and the Mughals called their Indian empire by the name of Hindustan. Okay. The term came to be used for the region of India between the river Indus and Brahmaputra and the Himalayan and the Vindhya mountain range. So basically, how did the name Hindustan came into existence? The above paragraph which I read, that on a physical map, until this, both the paragraphs. This question will come, included, important, must, mandatory. And you have to describe it, not just giving one or two line that would do. I'll mention specifically that, explain in detail that how did this name Hindustan came into existence. Explain in detail. So this is where the answer lies. So basically, it's Hindu. The word Hindu, or you can say Hindustan, it's a word which is used by both the Persian and the Arabic. It is used in their languages as well. And when this Islamic conquest was done in our country, especially the Delhi Sultanate, the Mughal Empire, okay, they called India as Hindustan, and that is how we got the name Hindustan. Okay, I hope you got the entire history behind it. And also it says that this particular term Hindustan is used for that particular area of India, okay, which lies between the river Indus and the Brahmaputra, and also the Himalayas and the Vindhya mountain range. Okay, so only for that, is it only for that particular area? What about the other portion of our country, southern India and all? Let's see. Though the name Hindustan continued to be popular throughout the medieval period, the area which was covered by these names varied widely. During the early medieval period, for example, which means for instance, the name denoted the land lying between Indus and its five branches, as we have read, and the land between river Ganga and Yamuna. In the late medieval period, the name came to denote much of what modern India is today, that is including South India. Alright. So in the early medieval period, early means beginning, when the medieval period began, okay, the term Hindustan or the word Hindustan mainly referred to that particular area which, as I told you, which was between river Indus, Brahmaputra, and the Himalayan, the what do you call mountain ranges. Okay, but whereas in the late medieval period, it's a continuation of the previous paragraph. Whereas in the late medieval period, this name Hindustan also comprised of a wider area, or you can say the modern India that we have, that is even South India. So with this, we come to the end of this chapter. There are some key points in page number 137 right on top. Let us just go through quickly, okay? And also glossary for sure. Please mark it up, memorize the glossary so that you don't, you have got a good amount of words with you. Otherwise, you will just be limited with few handful of words. And in order to describe, in order to speak or express your opinion or even to frame sentences, at times it happens that you know the answers, but it feels like you're unable to write. Why? Because lack of words. So please go through this glossary and all. Mark it up. Okay, let us discuss the key points that we have come across in this chapter. The period of Indian history that lasted about a millennium, extending from 700 CE to 1700 CE, is called the medieval period. This period is divided into two phases: the early medieval period and the late medieval period. Next, inscription, coins, monument. What do you call it? Archaeological sources of history, right? Inscription, coins, monument, sculpture, and painting are some of the major archaeological sources. Yes, it's mentioned out there. And court chronicles, biography, autobiography, literary sources of history. India had different names in past, such as Bharatavarsha, Aryavarta, and so many things become across. What? Sapta Sindhu, Hindustan, and all, right? So during the medieval period, it was called Hindustan. So with this, we come to the end of this chapter. Yes. So go through the texts. See, each and every word, each and every line has been discussed. Nothing has been skipped. All right. So now it's your responsibility. This fill in the blanks, true or false, answer the following question in brief, answer the following question in detail, and also some HOTS, high order thinking skill, page number 138. 1, 2, 3, 4, around 3, 4 questions are there. So the ball is in your court now. Okay. Complete it. Fine. Don't expect that I will open my mouth and keep and sir will feed me the rice. No, not at all. I have prepared the food for you. It's being cooked. It's up to you now. Serve it yourself, eat it. Wash the dish, plate, and keep it. That's all. Right? See you in the next class. Study well.